In today's episode, a woman walking her dog through her neighborhood was attacked by vicious black bear hiding in a neighborhood dumpster. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying black bear attack on Lana Hollingsworth, attacked by a black bear 3 times in the same night. Welcome to Final Affliction. This is the tragic story of Lana Hollingsworth, a 61-year-old who had recently retired from her work as a loan officer for a mortgage company. She was a kind, loving, and compassionate woman who volunteered in her spare time. In June 2011, she and her husband were staying in their holiday home in the Pinetop Country Club, a community 200 miles northeast of Phoenix, Arizona. It was late in the evening on Tuesday, June 28, 2011, and Lana stepped outside her home with her dog. She was taking it for a walk before bedtime around the sports village area of the country club. The air was still. A gentle, warm breeze rustled the leaves in the trees as Lana walked around the grounds of the country club. Apart from the rumble of cars passing by on a nearby road, the neighborhood was quiet. Lana had taken a stroll through the country club countless times before. It was routine for her when they visited the area. She loved her dog like one of the family, and it was always a comfort to have her faithful companion by her side. But as she walked in silence that night, she suddenly heard a noise. It made her stop in her tracks. Her dog pulled at its leash and started to bark. In the gloomy, dusky light, Lana could make out a large shadow just 60 yards away. There was a commotion, the sound of glass bottles clinking together, rustling, and a series of thuds and bangs. A shadow then dropped down from a dumpster and landed on the sidewalk. It was a bear, a large, 250-pound male black bear scavenging in the trash. It sniffed the air and turned its head. It had sensed Lana and her dog standing a short distance away. It wasn't startled by their presence. It was bold. It was on the hunt, and it ran towards Lana. The stocky, powerful limbs propelled it forwards as it charged at the terrified woman. Its ears were pinned back against its head. Saliva dripped from its jowls, and its eyes were fixed on Lana. She was gripped by a feeling of terror and let out a yell. She turned to flee, but the bear was upon her so quickly she didn't have time to react. It pounced onto the back of her, and she fell forwards. As she hit the sidewalk, she banged her head on the hard concrete. Then she felt the bear on top of her. It instinctively went for her neck and the back of her head. Lana tried desperately to protect herself. She wrapped her arms around her neck and tried to curl up into a tight ball, but the power from the ferocious bear was too much. Lana screamed. Her desperate cries were heard by those in the neighborhood. They came rushing outside. The scene that unfolded in front of them was shocking. They could see Lana kicking and thrashing about underneath the huge black bear. She was almost entirely covered by the animal, its thick, shaggy coat covering its round body and powerful paws swiping at the victim beneath it. Some ran to their cars and sounded the car horns in a desperate attempt to scare the animal away. They shouted and clapped their hands, running towards the bear and waving their arms above their heads. This seemed to work. The noise and the commotion scared the bear, and it leapt off Lana and ran up a nearby tree. Lana lay dazed on the ground. Her dog had run away, and she felt the searing pain from the rips and tears to her body and head. She cried out for help, but in a moment of pure horror, before anybody could get to Lana and assist her, the bear scrambled back down the tree as quickly as it had scarpered up and ran at Lana again. It was hungry. It saw Lana as prey, and this was a predatory attack. In the frenzy, the bear was focused on its victim, on immobilizing it and securing a meal. This was instinct. Lana was losing blood. She was now in a semi-conscious state, but she still tried to push the bear away with her arms. Slashes across her hands and forearms were testament to the incredible fight she put up. As locals continued to try and scare the bear away, it leapt off the 61-year-old once more and backed away momentarily before returning to her a third time. It was relentless. This time, one of the neighbors ran at the bear. It was too terrible to watch, seeing someone being torn apart like that. Finally, the bear ran away, its lumbering outline disappearing into the darkness. The emergency services were called, and hearing all the commotion, Lana's husband Marv rushed outside. He couldn't believe what he saw. His wife, laying covered in blood on the ground. He ran to her and crouched down by her side. He held her hands in his and told her that everything was going to be okay, but he didn't know if it would be. But Lana knew her time was up. The life had been sucked out of her, and she could feel herself fading. She looked into Marv's eyes and said the most devastating thing a partner could hear. "Marv, I love you. I'm going to die. Please take care of the dog." Marv started to pray. He held his wife in his arms and prayed for her to make it. The two of them were inseparable, and losing her was more than he could bear. Lana was rushed to Scottsdale Healthcare Osborne Medical Center in critical condition. Nobody knew if she was going to make it. The doctors put her into a medically induced coma whilst they operated on her battered body. She underwent 7 surgeries in as many days. As she lay there, unresponsive, Marv continued to pray. Family members set up a fundraiser to help pay for the medical bills. It was the least they could do. Her injuries sustained from the attack were not covered by her medical insurance, so it was all Lana's friends and family could do whilst they waited and hoped for her recovery. As the days ticked by and turned into weeks, it looked like Lana might make it. The medical staff were hopeful for her recovery. She was fighting back. Some of her wounds were healing, and her vital signs were improving. She received 11 operations in total to repair her scalp that had been torn away and the deep defensive wounds on her arms. But in a cruel twist of fate, Lana suddenly took a turn for the worse. Unbeknownst to the doctors, a new strain of bacteria was overcoming Lana's body. This bacteria was surging through her, likely from the bear's claws, and hadn't responded to the antibiotics. Suddenly, her skin grafts weren't taking, and her vital signs began to plummet. Her body was shutting down. The medical team raced to try to determine what bacteria were causing the intense infection, but no matter what treatment they tried, it wouldn't work. 4 weeks after being admitted to the hospital, Lana was struck by a massive brain hemorrhage, which was thought to be caused by the bacteria. She died on the night of July 25, 2011. It was a terrible and tragic end to Lana's life. It had been a completely unprovoked attack, and one which deeply concerned the sheriff's office and the state's game and fish department officials. The bear had behaved extremely aggressively and had not been deterred by the attempts from locals to scare it away. Immediately following the attack, the bear was hunted down with the help of sniffer dogs. It was found about a mile away and was shot and killed. It was the only way that officials could ensure the public's safety. It was thought that recent wildfires and droughts had driven bears to search further afield to find food. This male bear had become desperate in the search for something to eat and had been attracted to the neighborhood by the smell of food and trash found there. On that fateful night, it had seen Lana as a credible target and a potential meal, attacking her ferociously. Forensic tests carried out after its death confirmed that it was the bear responsible for Lana's attack. Lana had a large family who had struggled to come to terms with her loss. Between Lana and Marv, there were 16 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren. She always tried to make a stressful situation better through her compassion and caring nature. One of her volunteer roles involved her dressing up as a clown to bring some cheer to patients in local hospitals. She began volunteering with the Gilbert Fire Department in 2007. Among her volunteer roles, she was a community emergency response team member, a community assistance volunteer, and CPR instructor in her hometown of Gilbert. Her loss was felt all the way through the community. The last previous attack to take place in Arizona had occurred 5 years earlier, in 2006. Lana had become the 7th victim of a bear attack in the state since records began in 1990. None of the previously recorded attacks had been fatal. Lana was the unfortunate first person to meet their terrifying final affliction.